guys, it's Kat and I'm back today to do a review of a palette. I haven't done a palette review since probably March, early April. I had a baby and it's really hard to do these multi-look reviews because I just don't have the time. Recently I picked up the Natasha Denona Bronze Palette from a Sephora sale, so I got it 20% off and I thought this is a good one to get back into the reviews with because I know a lot of people are interested in what I think about Natasha Denona palettes, especially if it's worth the money because they're quite expensive. And I really want to play with the palette. So I thought, look, it's a good one to start with. I'm going to show you the palette, talk about it. I'm going to do swatches. I'll leave timestamps in the description box, so if you want to jump around, you can. And then what I'll do is I'll show you me applying it for the first time. So I've got no makeup on my eyes, and I'll let you know what my first impressions are. And then I check back in over the next week or so with the looks I create using this palette, and I let you know what I end up thinking about it overall once I've used all shades. All right, let's start with the information about the palette. So it is a 15 pan palette. It's in new, sort of not new packaging, but it's very reflective packaging. You can see it just catches the light a lot. They have had palettes like these sort of plastic palettes before, but this one I think is the first one that is this highly sort of reflective. The more common palettes that she has are these sort of foam ones. Some of them are reflective, but they have this sort of foam material rather than the hard plastic, but you know, it is what it is. It is the bronze palette, so obviously the shades are going to be quite bronze toned. I'm thinking that this is actually a very warm palette. I think of bronzes, there's like warm tone bronzers, neutral bronzers, cool tone bronzers. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more variety in here because I do like neutral and cool toned, but I see a lot of golds. I see a lot of sort of reddy tones, rose gold tones. So I actually wouldn't necessarily call this a bronze palette if I had to name it. I'd probably call it a rose gold palette or a copper palette, but I think we'll definitely see the colors and how they apply on the skin when I swatch them. It does look like there's two blues up in the corner. These are actually browns. And I believe one of them at least is her wet formula. I believe Deep Dive, that dark one, is her sort of cream to powder formula, which you see a lot of in the Metropolis palette. So if you're familiar with this palette, there are a bunch of these sort of creamy cream to powder formulas, and it looks like she's carried over at least one of them into this new palette. I thought I'd also point out the pan sizes. This is her midi size pan, so it's the medium size pan. So it's the same size as the Metropolis pans. So there you go. They're, I think, 1.28 grams per pan, which is plenty of eyeshadows. The Metropolis was a lot more expensive because it's got a lot more shades, but the pan size is the same. I do want to point out as well that I'm not going to give you prices because in different countries it's going to be different priced. So I'll just link a few places down below where you can pick this up. I believe it is permanent, so no rush. Look for a sale because it is expensive. In comparison to the bigger pans, so this is like the gold palette, for example, you can see that the pan sizes are a lot smaller, which I prefer because this is a lot cheaper than this. And realistically, as a consumer, I don't need, what is this, 2.5 grams of product per eyeshadow. This is more of a makeup artist amount of product. I much prefer to spend less money on the 15 pans in a smaller version because chances are to actually use this up, it's going to take you years anyway. So it's enough product for me. Comparing it to the mini pans, so this is a mini palette of hers. This is the mini glam palette. These contain, oh, I just stuck my finger in it. These contain 0.8 grams per pan, and you can see that they are smaller. So it is in between the minis and the large. All right, when it comes down to the breakdown of formulas, it looks like there's 5 CM eyeshadows, which I believe are creamy mattes. They're at least the matte powder eyeshadows. There's 4 shades that end in M, which I believe are metallics. There's 1 CP, which I think is cream to powder. So that's that one that I was talking about in the Metropolis palette. There's 4 DC eyeshadows, which are duochrome eyeshadows. And there's 1 that ends in K. I'm not sure what that stands for, but it's a very sparkly looking shadows. So there are a lot of different finishes in this palette, which is good because if you're going for one sort of color story, you want to at least be able to change things up with different finishes. So I do like that there's a lot of different finishes. Another thing just really quickly to note before we get onto the swatches, not only is this quite a sturdy packaging, so it's got a magnetic closure and you can depot the eyeshadows. So in all her palettes, you can actually get a magnet and pop them out, or you can just put a pin in there, pop out the pans. So if you do want to customize your own pans, like for example, I could swap around the pans in these two palettes because they're the same size, or you can depot them and put them in a different palette if you wanted to. But so that's great. This is a very fingerprinty packaging. It is what it is. But the mirror is a really nice size mirror. If you were needing to, and also holds up by itself. So it's not one that you need to hold to keep it up. It's one that you, once you put it in place, it stays there. So if you did want to angle it on your desk and do your makeup, you can definitely do that. Or if you like to hold your eyeshadows like this and do your makeup, you can definitely easily use it as a mirror. And it lies all the way flat as well. So if you do want to put it on your table and have the mirror flat, you can definitely do that. Alright, so that's the top row. You can see that it's mainly mattes here. That's that cream to powder finish. In the pan, again, it looks very, very blue, but it almost looks like a plum brown here. And then that duochrome here is a brown and it's got a blue shift to it. So in the pan, it looks blue, but realistically, it's got a really warm brown base and a bit of a blue sheen. We've got a really highly metallic one here, which I applied with one swipe. You can see it ends up looking a little bit chunky, but you can blend it out and it looks very, very metallic, very pigmented. Turn the brightness down a little bit so we can see that a little bit better. So this is the second row. This one here is called True Bronze. I wouldn't call that a true bronze in my opinion. That one is definitely more of a sparkly, quite warm gold. So you can see that this palette, if you looked at this, I wouldn't call this a bronze palette. I'd call it like a red and gold palette. So this is an example of what I mean by it not being true bronze in my opinion, but they all look like they swatch very nicely. Whoa, that's super metallic. So this is the last row and it's a little bit more interesting. We've got a red based one that's got almost like a bronzy gold sort of sheen to it. This is a cool tone bronze. This is what I prefer when it comes to bronzes, so I would have liked to have seen more shades like this in the palette. We've got a beautiful, and if you turn it, it's very, very pink, but then it's got a gold shift to it, so that's a duochrome, and a really highly wet metallic. This is a very, very foiled goldy bronze, and then just a nude. So that one's quite an interesting bottom row. I also like to show the palette after I've swatched it to see if there's any sort of issues, like did I need to dig in a lot? Was there a lot of kick up? There's a little bit of powderiness here, not too much. You can see that the pan was quite disturbed here because it's that very, very creamy metallic, but otherwise it's held up really, really well. It didn't take a lot to pick up the product on my fingers. They performed really nicely over just my bare skin, which is really nice. So you can see there, not much damage done to the palette. You can see that that one up there is that cream one, but there we go. All right, time to demo the palette, and I thought I'm going to try to maybe use the Cool Tone Bronze because that's sort of my favorite bronze color. I want to use these shades as well because I want to demonstrate the cream to powder on camera, but also this sort of brown blue really intrigues me, so I might use a cooler tone look today. I'm going to prime my eyes with the NARS primer. This is in the shade Light. So I also have some contact dermatitis here. So if there's any weird sort of patchiness here, don't blame the eyeshadow, blame my eye. All right, I'm just using the shade Beach to set my base. This is a lot darker than what I'd normally use to set my base, but there's no lighter shades in here. But I do like to put a matte in the crease just to sort of stop any gripping to the primer. All right, I've just picked up the shade Palladium, which is that cooler tone bronze, on a sort of fluffy, sort of flatter brush. I prefer to use these for shimmers. Some people like really firm flat brushes. I don't like those as much. I feel like these for me work a lot better. So I know people like to judge me for that, but these pick up the product really nicely and also sort of blend as you apply them. This shade is gorgeous. I hope you can see it properly. I've got studio lights on, which is annoying. Usually I like to do these in natural lighting, but you know, my lounge room is full of baby toys at the moment, so it is what it is. I've got to film in here. This is definitely the type of shade that I personally love to wear and what I would love to see more of in this palette. That's from the get-go, that's going to be my criticism of this palette, is that what I consider bronze, there's not enough of that in this palette. Now with the same brush, I'm just going in with Rhodium, which is that sort of blue tone brown. I just want to put that on the outer half. I want to see what this is like. I might put a little bit on the lower lash line as well, but this adds a really beautiful element to the look. It almost applies like well, it's a brown base, but it almost looks purpley on the eye, like a purpley blue toned shade. Like it adds a really nice little element of color without it being too sort of scary and bold. This is really beautiful. All right, I've just turned the brightness down a little bit on the camera, so hopefully you can see that sort of purpley element it gives. It's like almost like a plummy browny color that it gives, which is really, really pretty. Now with a pencil brush, I'm going in with the shade Silk, which is that really metallic one that looked really wet on when it was in the swatches. So the one that's on the lower row of the palette. This again is a really beautiful, it's a very, very highly metallic shade. So that is definitely a super metallic shade and it goes on really, really nicely, but it is a very, very warm tone. So I wouldn't, again, I'd call this more of a coppery gold, but it is very, very pretty. All right, I've just wiped off that brush and I'm going to use it with the shade Deep Dive, which is that cream to powder. Again, this is a really, I love this formula. I've used it before in the Metropolis. It is a cream, but it's almost like a dry cream that sort of melds into a beautiful creamy matte, easy to apply, easy to blend. I really like this formula. I don't know how long it lasts in the pan when it's going to dry out, but using it, it's just really easy. And I like that it's got this particular shade in this formula because if you wanted to, you can pick it up with an angle brush, use it as a liner. This shade would also be really nice just to use it as like a creamy base for something like a duochrome, so it can just really pop onto it. But I think it adds a really nice depth to the palette, which I think all palettes need. Got a bit of fallout happening. I'll see if I can brush that away. Yeah, that's sort of brushed away pretty easily. And to finish it off, I'm going to go in with the brush I started with and the shade I started with, which is Beach. And I'm just going to sort of blend the edges a little bit just to tidy it up a bit. These mattes apply really nicely. They don't seem to skip. They don't seem to grip. You know, it does look patchy here because that's my skin, but otherwise it's a really nice matte. All right, so that's a look. I'm going to go away and put some liner and mascara on and I'll be back. All right, that's a look with liner and some mascara. So I've used the MAC Fluid Line in Past Twilight, which is one of those dark plummy browns, very, very similar to that cream color. So it worked really nicely. I put that on wing and also the waterline, and I used the Nabla Major Pleasure mascara. So that's all I've done to finish it off. I am going to move the camera now back to where it was before so you can see sort of front on. This lighting is a little bit on an angle, so it looks a bit funny. All right, so hopefully you can see the look a little bit more clearly there. They all applied really nicely. There was no issues with application, but I do really like this look. Of course, you can probably make it a little bit more cool toned if you didn't use that inner corner highlight and maybe went for, I don't know if there's another one that's even cooler. No, there's not. Everything probably from now on out is going to be quite red toned, quite yellow toned, quite orangey gold toned. So I do think that that's the first limitation I've noticed from this palette, is if you do like neutrals or cool tones, there's pretty much this one and those two, and that's, you're done. All right, I'm back for look number 2. I'm in natural lighting, which is so much more flattering and it shows the colors a lot better. Unfortunately, yesterday I filmed quite late, so I couldn't do that. I had to go with artificial lighting. One thing I want to mention, so I'm wearing 3 colors on my eyes today. This is definitely not bronze, but it is very, very pretty. I want to go for something a little bit more soft, and I'm going to address that in a second. So it looks quite rose gold in the pan, but when you do swatch it, it definitely is more of your pink base with a gold sheen to it. So it is a duochrome. It's a lot more colorful than I expected. Look how bright that is compared to the pan. This is very, very pink. I don't think this really belongs in a bronze palette, but it is a pretty shade. It's not super highly metallic or reflective. So if you really wanted the strong duochrome effect, you probably need to apply it over a really sticky base or apply it wet. I just applied it over the same primer as I did yesterday, but I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but when I'm looking in the mirror, this half of the eye looks vibrant pink and then this part looks gold. Now I did put a little bit of gold on the inner corner and lower lash line from a different shade, but I'll zoom in and show it to you. The duochrome effect is actually really, really pretty. So I have to give them that. This shade is very, very pretty. That's the one I put on the inner corner and I blended it all out with that top shade there, which is sort of like a very yellowy transition shade. So that kind of gave it more of a peachy transition. Another thing I wanted to mention is I think I'm going to struggle creating a lot of looks quickly with this palette because lately we're in lockdown. I've got a baby. I need to do pretty quick makeup looks. I don't like anything super bold. It's just too much for my current lifestyle. So I like a bit of a wash of color, and I feel like this is Groundhog Day. When I reviewed the Metropolis palette, my criticism was, firstly, I think that one had a lot of redundant, sort of repetitive shades, but also it was sort of, you couldn't create muted looks. It was all or nothing. And I feel like this palette's the same. All the shimmery shades are quite bold, either in texture or color. So yeah, I feel like this is going to take a lot longer for me to do because I don't want to do super bold looks every single day. All right, so hopefully you can see that that pink in the outer corner is just one shade that goes all over the lid. The gold that I put in the inner corner is right in the tear duct and a bit lower. So pretty much all the exposed lid that I'm currently showing you is just one color. But because it's a duochrome, you can see that when it catches a light, it goes one color, and when it's in the sort of shadows, it goes another color. You can also see it here. So it's a really, really pretty shade, just really pink and vibrant. All right, I'm checking in with look number 3, and I decided to go an all matte look because when I do test out a palette that has quite a few mattes, I like to do an all matte look. And I was attempting something a little bit more subtle, but these colors are quite dark. Like they don't look super, super dark when you like look at them in the pan. But sort of on further reflection, like that's a lighter shade. And in look number 1, I put that in the crease to set my base, and you could see that it's not super, super light. So what I did today was I used, I think it was only 3 shades. I ended up using this shade here all over the lid. So it's quite a dark sort of burnt reddy orange color. Then I used this mustardy color just to blend it out. I actually had to use a clean fluffy brush to then blend that out because again, that was quite pigmented and quite dark. So to get like a nice blend, I guess, you needed, I would have liked an even lighter shade than this just to sort of blend it a bit more, but it is what it is. Then I took this shade here and sort of made a winged liner with it. Now, before I did that, I thought the look was a bit of a failure, and I think it looks a lot nicer in person on camera because the lighting at the moment, sun's going down, it sort of makes it look darker than it actually is, but it just looked like sort of a blur of matte. But then when I took that cream product and sort of just put it on a flat eyeshadow brush, I didn't even use a liner brush, I just sort of put it on the lash line and then just flicked it out. I think it brought the look together a lot. So I really like the addition of this shade in the palette because I feel like if anything is going to act like a liner, the cream to powder formula works really, really well because I have tried to use dark eyeshadows as a bit of a sort of wing shape before, and I find that often they can just blend away, or throughout the day they sort of fade away, whereas this, since this is a cream, it's got that little bit of a grip. It sort of stays where you want it to go, but also it stays put throughout the day. So I thought this was a really, really good addition to the palette. You can use it as a matte, but using it as like a soft liner is a really good idea. So I have had this on for quite a few hours now, and I do want to say, look, they're quite pigmented mattes. They did apply pretty easily. My concealer's sort of going to shit at the moment, so ignore that. Yeah, they were quite pigmented. They blended all right. They weren't super, super blendable, but they didn't skip and tug on the eye too much, so I can't complain. I wouldn't say that they're like outstanding, amazing mattes. Like, you don't need to buy this palette for the mattes, but they do work quite nicely. They're fine. All right, I'm back with the next look. Is it look 3 or 4? I don't know. Anyway, it's more of a bold look because I'm filming beauty news today. So this look really, I think, encompasses the sort of vibe of this palette, which I don't consider bronze. I've said this before. It's sort of more copper. Now I did use the shade True Copper, so I used this one all over the lid, and I didn't build it up too much. I sort of just put it on with a brush pretty lightly, and it is pretty intense of a color. I blended that into the crease, and I use this to sort of blend out the look as well. So it's mainly just this sort of very orangey, peachy, yeah, it's very orange. It's very, very sort of, it looks brown on the finger, but on the eye, oh look, I look dead because it's like the morning light. It's very blue, but it is quite an orange sort of transition matte shade. And then this is the shade that I used all over the lid. It's very soft, very sort of pigmented, and it's not focusing, but there we go. But those colors go really well together. So what I also did was I just popped a little bit of True Bronze, which looks like a true gold, just on the inner corner for a little bit of added sort of brightness in there. You can barely see it. And then also what I did, I took this shade here, which is Magma, and I use that as a liner. So I use that, just run a little bit on the lower lash line. I did line my waterline with a brown, but you can also see probably better here, that sort of winged line is actually just a detail brush and a bit of that eyeshadow. So I didn't actually use liner today on my actual lash line. I just used it on my waterline, but that definition that you can see is an eyeshadow, and it worked really well, gripped really nicely to the skin, really nicely pigmented, and I do think that color works really beautifully as a liner. It's like a dark sort of burgundy color, adds a bit of shape to the look. So I was probably most impressed with this shade's ability to act as like an eyeshadow and a liner. And that's probably the most impressive thing I found about this look. So hopefully you can see the sort of orange tones. You can see the texture from the bronze versus the copper. The copper is more of a metallic, whereas this is more of a sparkly sort of shade. And then you can see that the liner that I've used, I did put some half lashes on, so it's a little bit more dramatic. It's sort of hiding the liner a little bit, but this liner effect I really like. I think it complements the look, and it did grip to the skin really nicely. Often matte eyeshadows can be quite powdery and they just sort of blend. They don't actually give a defined shape. They sort of just blend themselves, but this one was, yeah, really nice as a liner. So that's that look. All right, we're back again with another look. I'm not sure what number I'm up to, but this one is fairly bold for a Sunday afternoon where I'm not doing anything. But again, that is pretty much how I find this palette is sort of summed up: warm and bold. So today I use this color all over the lid. It is actually a really nice color. It looks a lot nicer on the eye than I think it does look in the pan. And then I used this shade in the crease. So it is a sort of a warmer sort of yellowy sort of crease. And then I popped a little bit of this shade on the inner corner just to brighten it. I've got a baby, hang on a sec. All right, we've got a baby that's interested in my makeup as well. Not really, but he's interested in just hanging out. So yeah, the shade that I used all over the lid, I also used on the lower lash line. And I also used that matte that's just above it in the outer corner, so add a little bit of redness. And then I used this sort of cream to powder shade, that dark brown, as a liner, so you'll see that when I zoom in, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I think it's a nice look, but again, really bold. I do want to swatch the one that I put all over the lid because I don't think you can see it that clearly just in the pan. All right, so this shade Gloaming, it's like a reddy base, but it's got a bit of a bronze shimmer to it. So it does look quite red on the eye, but it's not sort of a really dark, intimidating red. It does have a bit of burgundy sort of elements to it, but it sort of looks a little bit fresher with a bit of the sort of bronze shimmer. So I thought that was a pretty unique shade. It applied really nicely and it gives a really cool effect on the eye. So it gives a red effect, but also nothing too super bold. I did make it a little bit more red with that matte, but yeah, I'm surprised at how much I like that lid shade. So hopefully you can see that lid shade. It is that red base with that sort of goldy bronze shimmer to it. I've put a little bit more shimmer on the inner corner and a little bit more red matte in the outer corner. You can see how that cream to powder shade worked as a liner. It actually worked really nicely, but it was a bit crumbly. So it's not a really smooth, creamy sort of shadow because it is a cream to powder. So it applied a little bit crumbly, but it did give a nice effect. Oh, why so grumpy? All right, so I'm back with another look, and this one I wanted to go a little bit more cool toned. I wanted to go back into that rhodium shade because that one I think really intrigues me because it's got that sort of brown with the blue. It's quite a unique color, so I decided to wear that today. I put that all over the lid. I used beach in the crease just to sort of set the base and blend it out. So that in the crease, that all over the lid. And then I took the shade Alloy and just patted that on the inner portion of the lid and on the lower lash line. So it's sort of like a slightly halo eye. I put some wing liner on and then I blended out the wing liner with this deep dive shade. So I took that just on the lash line and on the top lash line as well. Lower lash line, top lash line. So I really like this look. I think it turned out really pretty. It almost has like a duochrome effect because it's got the brown and the blue. It then has that gold part, which blends really nicely together and gives a bit of a twinkle to the lid, and then it goes back to that blue brown. So I really like this look. It's probably one of my favorite looks I've done with this palette. And what I think I also like about it is that it is quite cool tone. And what I can imagine is taking this shade with that shade and then putting any shade on top, just popping it on, and I do think it will complement really well. So even though that's a bit of a strange looking shade, I think it is very, very complementary to this palette, and it creates a really nice way that you can deepen and cool down any of these other shades, because I can imagine the pink going with it, the red going with it. All right, up close and personal, this is a look. You can see it does give a bit of a cool toned effect by using that bluey brown color, and you can see that I've just popped that gold on the inner portion just to add a little bit of dimension to it. And it does create a really nice effect. I think the colors worked really well together. All right, I'm back with my last look and I'm ready to conclude what I think about the bronze palette from Natasha Denona. Today I wanted to revisit that, this sort of cool bronze shade, the one that I consider more of a true bronze. So I wanted to use that primarily in a look. It's what I used in the first look, but that lighting wasn't as good as this lighting, so I wanted to show it to you again, and I wanted to use this red because I hadn't used it prior. So what I did was I used Beach just in the crease. I put that all over the lid and the lower lash line. I ran this shade on the outer half, or the outer third of the lid and lower lash line, and I put a tad bit of this matte just in the outer corner and blended it with that as well. So that's the primary sort of color story. It's a cooler tone bronze and readiness. I think it's a really pretty look. They all applied really nicely. I had no issues with them. And I do think this red tone complements bronzes really nicely. So I do understand why they put this sort of tone in a bronze palette, because it does sort of give a little bit of depth and a little bit of, like, I don't know, edginess, something a little bit different, but it does complement the bronze tone really well. So let's zoom in. All right, so here's the eye look. You can see that sort of cooler tone bronze is on the inner half, then it sort of blends together with that reddy tone, and that reddy tone just really sets off the bronze. So yeah, I didn't put any inner corner highlight. That's just that sort of cooler tone bronze color. It all blended really nicely. It all applied really nicely. I put this over an eyeshadow stick, so I didn't even use like a traditional primer. And I just think they apply really nicely and quite boldly. I don't know, I'll talk about this in my conclusion, but I do feel like that sort of cooler tone bronze on me looks more like a nude that will suit my eye coloring. So I do miss more of those shades being in this palette, because I do think that's what sort of complements my skin tone the best and looks most sort of nude on me. So yeah, I just like that combo. It's really pretty. I did want to say as well that I think this red, the thing that's smart about it is in this palette there is also a lot of gold tones, the pinky tones. So I do think that these reds would complement every other shade in here. I even think you'll complement these. I think a dark brown with a bluey sort of tone to it with this red would set it off really nicely for quite a dramatic look. So even though it is like furthest from bronze in this palette, I think it works well in this palette. All right, time to conclude what I think about this palette. And I do have quite a lot of thoughts. I'll try to make it brief because I've talked about it throughout this review. Firstly, I really like the mirror. The mirror is really handy. I found myself doing my makeup in this mirror most days. So, you know, I think it's a really usable mirror, and I like that you can sort of move it to however you want it to go. Really, really handy. Quality, I think, is really nice. I think it's worth the price tag. I can't say that about every Natasha Denona palette. I do think They have like hits and misses. Some aren't worth the price tag, some are. I think these all perform really, really nicely. I do like the mix of finishes. I think the duochromes are like particularly impressive. So this shade that's like a brown with a blue shift, this shade which is that sort of red tone, which you can see like a burgundy with a more bronzy gold shift. I found that to be really unique. I don't think I have anything like that in my collection, and it was surprisingly flattering. Also, this pink shade here that's got that vibrant pink base and then that gold shift. I think they're really, really pretty shades, and you can create quite unique but very wearable and very eye-catching looks. So I do think those in particular, those shades are quite special. I do like that they had the cream to powder finish. I found this to be a little bit flaky if you tried to build it up as a liner, but it still works as a liner. And I think it works really nicely in this shade because you can almost have like a grippy eyeshadow blended liner effect. So I think that's really smart. And I found that it was also really nice that you can use a dark matte here as a liner as well. I'm sure you can use this one if you wanted to as well, because it is pigmented enough and not too powdery that it doesn't blend away everywhere. It does grip to the eye, and you can create a nice sort of liner effect with eyeshadow. So these all perform really, really nicely. So I do think it's a nice palette, and I do think it's worth the money. Now, even though I do like this palette, it is not what I expected, and I am a little bit disappointed in that regard. I did buy this online. I did look up swatches. I knew that it looked quite orangey and quite warm. I bought it anyway. It is what it is. But I would have liked to have seen more cooler tones and neutral tones of bronze in this. Natasha Denona calls this shade here a true bronze. I would call that a bronzy gold. To me, this sort of more browny tone is a bronze. In my head, I have bronzes as being sort of mid-toned, shimmery or metallic browns. I think bronze brown, often with gold tones, sometimes with more taupey tones. So I see bronze, what I think of bronze is a shimmery brown. So that's what I'm missing from this palette. Clearly Natasha Denona, in her head, bronze is more of a gold, and that's fine. It's just didn't meet my expectations of bronze. I would call this a copper palette. I would call it even like a, I don't know, rose gold palette. Overall, the effects that you create, unless you're dipping into these shades here, it is very, very warm. So yeah, take those out, and this palette is really, really warm. It's almost like a sunrise, sunset type palette. Like, look how warm that is. If you add those colors in, you can bring in some coolness, which I really like. Without these, I think I would have disliked this palette a lot more, because I do find this sort of grounds the look and makes it, to me, oh, let's turn down some of this brightness. Oh, natural lighting, I don't know what to do anymore. Yeah, to me, this sort of grounds the look and can bring it bit more neutral. This palette can really go quite far into the yellows and the orange tones and the, you know, vibrant pinks, which I don't expect when I hear a bronze palette. I do like that some of these shades have been added in to complement bronzes, but I still feel like there's a distinct lack of bronze to make this a bronze palette, in my opinion. And to me, that is something that I'm missing, because I love bronzes and I use bronzes on a daily basis. So I want to compare it to, this is the Mini Glam palette, which I think has a nice sort of neutral bronze in there. It's also got a cooler toned sort of almost gray bronze. And this shade here, which is almost an olivey matte, I think this to me is more of encapsulates the true bronze color than this whole palette does, in my opinion. So I think if I took out some golds and replaced some of the mattes, this would have been a much stronger palette. To me, I do think True Bronze, Alloy and Silk are way too similar in color. They're all golds with slightly different finishes, slightly different tones, and these mattes are all very, very similar. So you've got one that's more of a true nude, one that's more of a caramel, and one that's more of a peachy sort of color, but they are way too similar on the eye and on the skin to need all three. Let's just demonstrate. So there you go. They don't need to all be in the same palette. It really would have been nice. I'm just dipping into that mini palette for that more gray version. That would have changed the tone of a look. These all give a similar effect. One's more vibrant in pigmentation, so it's a little bit more orange. One's a little bit deeper, one's a little bit more nude, but I really would have liked to have seen something like this to bring a neutral element or a cooler tone to the palette to make it more versatile. So for me, I really would have loved them to have taken out one or two of the golds, one or two of those mid-toned mattes, and replaced them with different undertones. It would have been so much better. Again, so this is the true bronze from the palette. This is silk, this is alloy. They are way too similar in tone for my opinion. Let's try to rub this off. And we've got these three. Again, different finishes, different undertones, but on the eye, they end up looking very, very similar. If I take this shade here, which I consider more of a bronze, it's more of a cooler tone bronze, that would have given the palette just a different tone, which it is missing in my opinion. So this is definitely more of a palette for people that like the warmer tones, like the orange tones, like the gold tones, like the pinky red tones. And yeah, if you like that, you probably won't be disappointed in these colors. If you wanted a true bronze palette that really represents bronze, sort of neutral, cool, warm, this is something you're going to really be disappointed with and not think is worth the money. The next negative thing I think about this, and it's not really a super negative thing, it's just more of an observation. This is not a subtle palette by any means. I actually struggled using this over the last 3 weeks because I can't just grab a color, throw it on, and wear it with quite minimal makeup, because these are very, very bold shadows. They're either bold in color. So for example, this shade down here that you think could be like a nice wash of pinky gold, it is vibrant as all heck on the lid. So they're either vibrant in color or they're vibrant in texture. So the only really shade that I feel like I can use as a nude is this cooler tone bronze, because these shades really suit me in all finishes, whether it's glittery, metallic, satin, whatever. They really complement my skin tone. So I would have loved to have seen more shades similar to this to make this a lot more wearable. But every shade looked vibrant on the eyes, which is cool. It means that you've got a really bold eyeshadow that you don't need much building up to get the color. You don't need to really work at it to make it stand out on the eye. But it does also mean that every look you're going to create is quite dramatic. So that's one thing that I think is a limitation with this palette. So this is not the type of palette that you could just grab and wear to the office or wear to whatever. I feel like this is a very statement eyeshadow palette. But if you want something that you can just use to enhance your natural beauty and enhance your eye coloring and just look put together and a nice wash of makeup, and you don't want something that like stands out and takes over your look, you won't like this palette, because there is nothing subtle about this. This is as subtle as a sledgehammer. It's a punch in the face of pigmentation and color, which is great, but it also means it is limiting to how you can use this. And again, I bought this thinking it was going to be more bronze and something that I can wear every day, just reach for, chuck a bit of, bronze on, blend it out with a matte, you're good to go. And I don't find I reach for this very often, because it is a statement eyeshadow palette that you need to think about the construction of your look, because if you fuck something up, it is pretty obvious because the eyeshadows are quite bold. So what I really wanted from this, I actually get instead from my mini glam palette. I find this to be a lot more everyday friendly, and the tones are just what I expect from bronze. That also reminds me of another thing I forgot to mention. This has a highlighter shade in it, which is nice because sometimes you want to lift a look with a bit of lightness. This is quite an overall dark palette. The lightest shade would be probably these two, and I would call them mid-toned. I wouldn't call them light. So if you really want to use, if you like using highlighters to brighten areas, or if you've gone too dark and you want to lift a look with a bit of highlight, you won't get that from this palette. It's surprisingly dark. Most shades, probably besides these two, are mid-tone, so it's all one sort of, and probably besides that one as well. These are all the same sort of tone, so they're more of a mid-toned eyeshadow shade, and then you've got a bit of darkness. Now, I do think these dark shades are really smart ones to add in. I think they do complete a look, they do complement the other shades, but this overall is quite a dark, sort of smoky, orangey sort of gold palette. But I do want to say another positive just to end it. Let's make it a compliment sandwich. Every shade in here does work well together. I do think it's the type of palette that you could close your eyes, point to a couple of shades and create a cohesive look. So whether I choose this one, what's this one here? Gold, and this one, what's that one? Dark brown. And this one, what's that one? That, yeah, you can create a perfect look with those. So every shade does work together, which is great. Not all Natasha Denona palettes and not all palettes out there do that. I think that's really, really smart. It's just the tone is a little bit off. And if the tone was a lot more bronze, I would be singing its praises, but I don't need more golds in my life, especially if you've got Natasha Denona palettes. I've got the gold one, I've got the Metropolis palette, and I've got a couple of minis. And I feel like a lot of these, even though all these shades are new, they feel a little bit redundant with what Natasha Denona has in her collection already. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys. That's my first eyeshadow palette review back since having a baby, and I can confirm that that took 3 weeks to create. So yeah, I want to do these more, but please forgive me if I don't do them as often as I used to. I used to be able to do these reviews literally in a week. I used to wear the eyeshadow palette every single day and check in every day. Now it's more like I can do a glam look when I'm filming something else, which might be once, maybe twice a week. And then in between, I might use makeup once every 3 days. So yeah, they're going to take a bit of time, but I'm happy to be back. So I'd love to know if you've tried this palette, what you think. When I have mentioned this palette in another video, I have heard people say that they love theirs, or they're again disappointed in the color story. I've heard other people say that they returned it, they didn't like it. So I'd love to know if you've tried this palette, what you think about it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.